Hello, BookTube. It's Tuesday, and that means Tag Tuesday. I did an original tag of my own for today, but I also wanted to partake of other tags, and there's one that I was tagged in, I believe. It's the Awfully Big Adventure book tag that was created by Sean Stanfast and Mark at Book Time with Elvis as part of their August of Adventures grand world-conquering event. I'll leave links to everything down below, and it's all about adventure. So I've had my share of adventures. I thought I would dig right in here. Prompt number one is, do you like your adventure stories fictional or real life, and why? I like mine to be real life, and that's because fiction is dumb. That's a good enough reason. Number two is, if you could follow in the footsteps of any explorer, who would that be and why? I would choose a famous pair, Robert O'Hara Burke and William Willis, who were groundbreaking explorers who traveled the whole breadth of Australia. And the reason why I would do that is because I have never been to Australia, and that would be fascinating to do. I wonder if there are tours that you can take. There are tours in America where you can go along the path of, for instance, the Oregon Trail or the travels of Lewis and Clark. I wonder if there is one for Australia. I haven't looked. I'm never going to see Australia, unbelievably. It's the only place in the world I haven't been. And it has its own kind of dog that I'm never going to meet. I'm never going to meet a dingo and face smooch. But that would be the route, and that would be the reason, because it would be showing me something of this world that I've never seen. Then prompt number three is, where was the most romantic and or weirdest place that you have read a book, and what was that book? I admit that on some of my I've traveled. I've done a great deal of traveling. That's why I was attracted to this tag. And sometimes when I have done that, there's been a bit of affectation. I hate to look back on it and see it, but nevertheless, it's true. Sometimes I could not resist the location of where I was to dictate some of the work, especially if I was a guest in a place that had a library. Because I only had my own traveling contingent of books, just 15 or 16 books, and they never changed. And when I was traveling, I never visited a bookstore. I wasn't going to buy anything. Books are deadly heavy, and you don't get any return on your investment. I couldn't travel without books, but I had my own little battered library of books. I never even thought about adding to that when I was traveling. But a lot of times I was a guest in homes that had libraries, so I could do some reading there. And the most exotic, the most romantic reading that I ever did, probably, was also the most affectatious, which was I was on a balcony on the Grand Canal in Venice reading the poetry of Lord Byron as a guest of a nobleman, which is about as poncy and pretentious as it gets. And that will do for romantic. The most exotic, it might not be attractively exotic, but I've mentioned it a couple of times before on this channel that one time I was driven by necessity to read while sheltering from a snowstorm underneath a yak. Low-slung, very heavy-built cattle with long, shaggy, incredibly insulating hair. A natural thing to do if I was traveling in country with people who did not have much in the way of tents. They had no electricity, of course. We were a long way away from man-made shelter, and a long way away from safe natural shelter. And that's what yaks are for. That's what they're for. They're going to stand there. They are not going to be affected by all but the worst weather. So you just hunker down underneath them and wait it out. And then prompt number four is, if money was no object, what rare and or signed adventure book, fiction or nonfiction, would you purchase? If I were walking down the street and I came across an incredibly rare, signed first edition of a travel memoir or a travel novel or a travel photo book of some kind, I wouldn't stop and stoop to pick it up. I simply don't care about that sort of thing. So I don't have an answer to this question. I couldn't care less. I wouldn't take one unless it was something handy that attracted me. Certainly on its provenance alone, I wouldn't take such a thing for $1 at the Brattle Bookshop. So it just doesn't affect me at all. Prompt number five is, what place have you read about but never visited? Name a few of your favorite titles. And for me, that is Australia, the whole Australian archipelago. Australia and New Zealand and that sort of thing. I've never visited Australia. I came close, very close. We saw it on the horizon in the distance. And my crew, the captain of my crew, actually said, "Do you want us to make for land? Do you want to visit?" And I said to him, "No, there'll be time. I'll get to it." All these years later, I never did, and I never will. So my checklist for the world, for the one and only world I will ever see, is incomplete. Maddening. Maddening. So it's Australia. And I have read a fair bit about Australia. I listed here, I've read a lot of books by Thomas Keneally. He wrote a lot of, make-weight Wikipedia-style books on Australia. I've, of course, read Robert Hughes' book, Fatal Shore, a few times. Lovely thing. Lovely book. And I also read For the Term of His Natural Life by Marcus Clarke, which is a novel that used to be in the Penguin Classic line. I don't think it is anymore. I don't think For the Term of His Natural Life is in print anymore in America. And I don't know how much it told me about Australia. Like The Fatal Shore, it largely told me about Australia's convict founding rather than anything else. I'm sure that I'm missing a lot of really good books on Australia in the last 100 years. I'm sure that I am. And those are things that I would want to find and read, especially since the reading is all I'm ever going to do. I'm not ever going to go there. So I might as well. I might as well do all the reading that I can. And that is it. That is the awfully big adventure tag. It's not an awfully big tag at all. And all that's left is to tag some fellow adventurers. I have no idea who's been doing this tag. I tag anybody who wants to do this. The lame punting answer. If you haven't done this and have a BookTube channel, definitely do it. I'm interested in hearing about your travels. But anyway, that is another tag for Tag Tuesday. I'm going to wrap this up, but I'll be back. Thank you, BookTube.